LSU lands a commitment from the number one wide receiver in the country for the class of 2026. We'll tell you about him. It's Locked on LSU. Let's go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We are free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. As always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you so much for that. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Yes, LSU has landed the commitment from the number one wide receiver in America for the class of 2026, Tristen Keys. We'll dive into that. Our weekly visit with Shea Dixon from On3, the Bengal Tiger, who also talked about LSU recruiting quarterbacks, and a visit from a five-star offensive tackle. Oh, we got a lot to get to. Oh, by the way, Will Wade has a new job. You know I have to react to that with the former Tiger coach back in the Power Four. All that is coming up on today's episode, and we're glad to have you aboard with us here. But let us start at the top. Tristen Keys, five-star, number one wide receiver in America for the class of 2026. On Wednesday, went public with his commitment. He's picked the Tigers. Here's the bio, 6'2.5", 185. He's out of Hattiesburg, Mississippi. He is nationally in the On3 composite, the number 3 overall player at any position, the number 1 wide receiver, the number 1 player in the state of Mississippi. 24/7 rates him. Is the number 4 overall prospect. On3, number 8. Rivals, number 9. ESPN has him rated the lowest at number 16. 2 of the 4 services have him as the number 1 wide receiver. The other 2 services have him as the number 2 wide receiver. And he has offers from everybody. LSU, Ole Miss, Southern Cal, Bama, Auburn, Tennessee, A&M, Oregon, Texas, Notre Dame, Georgia, Miami, Florida State, Arkansas, Michigan, a partridge in a pear tree. You get the whole thing. Everybody wants him. He's the best receiver in the country. He's 6'2.5", 185. He's a freak show. And he's out of the Pine Belt right there in Hattiesburg, which has been very good to LSU. And 2 weeks ago, Shea Dixon from On3, the Bengal Tiger, was here with us. And he said this about Tristen Keys 2 weeks ago.
I guess people don't really realize this, and look, it's not that much different. But when you talk proximity, Hattiesburg's closer to Baton Rouge than Oxford and Starkville are. So that just puts LSU into the conversation with a lot of these South Mississippi kids. And you see what they did in the past 2 cycles. They signed in the Pine Belt. I mean, Oak Grove, B.J. Woodland signs as a corner and playing for him this past year. And then they signed a top 100 guy in Tyler Miller on the O-line out of Laurel, another Pine Belt guy. A common thread has been Donovan Tate, who is a Hattiesburg High grad himself, played ball at both Southern Miss and Nichols, and then has been in Louisiana, been on LSU staff, got promoted here recently in the recruiting department, and being on staff for a few years now, he's had a good eye on Keys being, hey, this kid that's coming through Hattiesburg High, and they were one of the first offers, and I've had him around a ton. So Tennessee, Bama, those are teams that are kind of being talked up a good bit, but LSU's right there with them.
That was 2 weeks ago. Tennessee, Bama being hyped up, but LSU's right there with them. And 2 weeks later, LSU pops the commitment of Tristen Keys, who was on campus for the LSU practice, the open practice on Tuesday, where the media got to go. Tristen Keys was there at that practice that day, and just a few days later now, he's popped his commitment or a day later, he's popped the commitment for LSU. You heard Shea in that bite mention Donovan Tate, and that's a name that a lot of LSU fans probably don't know yet, but you need to become familiar with. Like, everybody knows the on-field coaches. And by the way, you go look at Tristen Keys on Twitter. He raves about Cortez Hankton, LSU's receivers coach, who is also the co-offensive coordinator. Not only an amazing developer of talent at receiver, just look at how far Georgia has fallen at that position since Hankton has been gone. And LSU, Hankton took the baton and has just continued to run with it with the amazing talent that they've had come through LSU. But Donovan Tate is an important part of this. So Donovan Tate is in his mid-30s. You heard Shea say it there. Southern, Nichols, from the Pine Belt, Hattiesburg. He's also coaching JUCO. Had a chance a few weeks back to spend a good amount of time talking to Donovan Tate. I mean, just an incredible man, incredible story, and in coaching in this profession for the right reasons, just is very genuine. Well, when J.R. Belton was promoted from the director of recruiting to the director of football operations, Donovan Tate was promoted into J.R. Belton's old role as the director of recruiting. So very significant decision there. Not only do you got great alignment. You got Hankton, you got J.R. Belton, and here you have Donovan Tate, the head of recruiting, who's from Hattiesburg, who's got this relationship with Tristen Keys. Certainly a big part of this commitment. Now, I think this is massive for a couple of reasons. Number one, he's the number one player. He's the number one receiver in the country. Okay. And we keep talking about 2026 in Louisiana with this bumper crop in the state. And it is that. You have 6 players in the top 100. You've got top guys at their position like Lamar Brown and Blaine Bradford. And this is a class that was supposed to also have Jakeem Stewart in it, but he reclassified. Now he's at Southern Cal. But the point is, Richard Anderson, the number one defensive tackle. You got Bryson Martinez, one of the top offensive linemen in the country, who's already committed. Jabari Mack out of Destrehan. Listen, it's one of those years, like we've talked about plenty, when you look at each of LSU's championship years, you can look at cornerstone classes from the state of Louisiana. Go back to the 03 championship, that 01 signing class. Michael Clayton, Marcus Spears, Marquise Hill, Andrew Whitworth, all those amazing players from Louisiana who decided we're going to stay home and win a championship at LSU, and they did when they were juniors. Just go to the most recent title in 2019. You can look at Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase and Derek Stingley and Christian Fulton and Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Grant Delpit, who was a Louisiana guy but played his high school ball in the Houston area, and Patrick Queen. It's amazing. When you have those years in the state and you have that amount of talent in the state and you keep them home, those become the cornerstone classes. You have the 2011 signing class that we talk about. That was the fam, Jarvis and Odell and Freak Johnson, and Lyle Collins, all those guys. So all that to say, you have this great class in Louisiana. If you get all of those guys, and then you're supplementing with a guy like the number one receiver in the country who's from the Pine Belt in southern Mississippi, just a couple of hours away, awesome. Now, the other reason this is significant is playing time. Now, if you're Tristan Keys, there's 2 things that matter. Number one is you can look at LSU's history and track record of pumping receivers into the NFL. I mean, just look right now. Jamar Chase just signed the richest deal for a non-quarterback ever. Justin Jefferson. You can go back, look at Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas this year. Top 5 receivers in the NFL as rookies. You can go back to Jarvis and Odell, and obviously you can even go back to years like where James Wright, who didn't catch a pass at LSU his final season, was still a 7th-round pick. So you have that to sell, number one, and then number 2, you have playing time to sell. And that's something where there's the symbiotic feeling for both the player, Keys, and LSU. Listen, after 2025, there is going to be an exodus in the receiver room. Chris Hilton's out of eligibility. Aaron Anderson's out of eligibility. Xavier Thomas, Barry Brown. Nick Anderson will have a 5th year should he choose to use it, but as a 4th-year junior, it's hard to imagine if he has a good season that he comes back. I mean, that's 5 right there. That's not even including a guy like Bauer Sharp, who's a tight end, but is a pass catcher. So the guys you'd have coming back, in theory, if everybody comes back in 2026, Kyle Parker, who was injured all of last year, Kylan Billiot, Jelani Watkins, Teron Francis, who's an early enrollee, but probably is going to be buried on the depth chart this year as a freshman at LSU. Philip Wright coming in as well, another freshman, probably going to be buried. The point is you got a lot of talent, but man, you're not going to have a lot of skins on the wall. And so you're probably going to go into the portal next year to get a veteran, experienced player at receiver in the portal, 1 or 2 maybe. But it's to fill that gap of guys that left. I mean, Jaylen Brown, Shelton Sampson, Kai Preon. I mean, these guys that were part of your class that should be juniors right now that aren't here anymore, left you depleted, which necessitated going into the portal for Nick Anderson and Barry and Brown and Destin Hill and those guys. So we'll see how it all manifests. But the point is, it's not like you're going to have incumbents in 2026. You're going to have some guys that have been in the program, but nobody that's going to be like skins on the wall incumbent, big time playmaker for you, at least not that we can foresee right now. So lots of reasons why this would make sense. There's no doubt going to be an NIL rev share component to this as well for Tristan Keys. In time, when we learn what that is, we will share it with you as we do. But I know there's a lot of people who are cynical, and I want to address that when we come back. There's a lot of people who are saying, why should I care about this right now? Because he's just going to flip before signing day. I have a thought on that. I want to get to that. Also, we had our conversation with Shea Dixon, the updated quarterback, and a big 5-star offensive tackle that visited LSU. We'll get to that as we continue. Locked on LSU, your team every day. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. It also offers all-in-one convenience. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, even plan long-term goals. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off. That's for your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. And my goodness, what a time to discover Game Time. Imagine watching your favorite team live, feeling the energy of the crowd, witnessing the unforgettable moments. There's nothing like experiencing a big game in person. Getting tickets shouldn't be stressful. That is where Game Time comes in, making it easier than ever to grab last-minute seats at unbeatable prices. And remember, Game Time picks. Curation makes it easier to find better value for tickets to sports, concerts, comedy theater, anything. Check the Game Time app. There's amazing deals right now on NCAA tournament games. So go check it out right now. Download the Game Time app, and remember, they always offer the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. I know there's a lot of people that are looking at this commitment with Tristan Keys and going, I'm just not getting excited about it. I know, because a lot of you have already hit me up on Twitter, at Matt Moscona, by the way. And I get it. Look, a year ago for the 2025 class, there was a point where LSU had the number one quarterback, Bryce Underwood, the number one receiver, DeCorian Moore, and the number one running back, Harlem Berry, all committed. Only one of those guys signed with LSU. We know what happened. We don't need to rehash the Bryce Underwood story again, where Michigan dumped $12 million in his lap and he flipped, at the end of November. DeCorian Moore's at Oregon for a very similar reason. Well, there's a couple of things that are different now. Number one, first and foremost, is LSU has money. They didn't have as much money before. And the irony of losing Bryce Underwood is that losing Bryce Underwood is the thing that stirred your people into action. So an overt negative is the thing that spurred a positive. So you're talking about a collective that is well-funded, a donor base that understands their role, and an administration that has put together a revenue share plan with real NIL on top of it that they feel will position themselves very competitively financially moving forward. So that's one. All that's to say, listen, could a billionaire, the second, third richest guy in the world, come in right before signing day and drop a $12 million bag on a kid? Yes, that could happen. That's far less likely to happen now because of LSU's ability to be competitive in that space. So that's part of it. And revenue share is the other. I'm not going to say things are going to be capped, but it has changed the way that all these deals will be structured. So whereas LSU was at a certain disadvantage prior because of their inability to fundraise effectively, they're effectively now playing with a front load strategy where they can load up deals even now. So when rev share comes, they wanted to spend all their rev share dollars. They can then take those rev share dollars that aren't spent and put them to front load the next class. So they're always playing ahead. So I think, and maybe I'll be wrong, maybe December we look back and Tristan Keys isn't a part of the class. He signed somewhere else. Maybe that happens. But I feel much differently today than I did about it a year ago or 3 months ago because of what happened post Underwood, Jakeem Stewart, Cade Phillips, all that stuff. But also because of how the landscape is shifting and where LSU has it and how LSU has itself positioned in that changing landscape right now. So Tristan Keys, the other part of it is, for those who are like, I can't get excited about it, would you rather have the number one receiver committed to your program or not have the number one receiver committed to your program? I'd rather have him committed. Pied Piper effect, for the fact that you do hold him on, you're basically operating from the pole position. Long way to go to December, but I'd rather be where LSU is than any of the other schools that are trying to get him to decommit and then flip to their school. So LSU's in a great spot and has Tristan Keys committed for the class of 2026, the number one receiver in the country for 2026. But there's still a lot of work to do for 2026, and that's what we talked about with Shea Dixon. He did talk a little bit about the receivers, but what we started talking about in this class is something, it's an update that we need to hear, which is quarterback. And Bo Bentley, the four-star from Texas, top 10 quarterback in the country, visited LSU this past weekend.
They don't have a quarterback committed, right? And in the post-Underwood world, people were wondering what would happen this class. And you and I have talked plenty on the radio about most of the quarterbacks commit early, so most of the top 10, 15 are committed somewhere. And Bo Bentley is the top 5 quarterback who is not committed anywhere. OU is kind of considered the leader, but it was really the only school he's visited. So Chad Simmons and Wilt Fong, our national guys, caught up with him. And he said the visit weekend blew him away. So keeping an eye on that one out of Texas as they try to land a quarterback in this class. And then receiver, we've talked time and again that this could be a banner year at receiver given what they already have committed. A couple of guys in Louisiana who are 4 stars, first-team All-State, playing in high classifications, Ja'Kai Anderson and Kenny Darby. But Boobie Feaster was on campus, the top 10 wide receiver prospect who plays at DeSoto in Texas, a school LSU recruited well, but is also a guy from Louisiana. So then you look at Tristan Keys on campus right now. He's actually probably wrapping up his visit, but came in yesterday, saw practice today. I've talked about him on the show before, kind of because he's the number one receiver in the country and he's a 5-star, but more so because he went to Hattiesburg High, where I walked the halls of those many moons ago. So, yeah, he's a major priority. And that's another thing that I think people just don't realize maybe when they think about a Mississippi kid. Well, you've got Ole Miss and State, and Bama's on him hard, and Tennessee. LSU, Baton Rouge is a 2.5-hour drive from Hattiesburg, and they've recruited the Pine Belt well. They got DJ Woodland out of Oak Grove. They just got Tyler Miller out of Laurel, and now shooting for Tristan Keys. So you mentioned those guys. Jabari Max over in Destrehan, he swung through and will again this month. Destrehan obviously is kind of a pipeline to LSU at this point. He's a top 100 player, regardless of position. This could be one of those classes that was a lot like the Brian Thomas, Malik, Chris Hilton, Jack Besh, to where you look up and LSU signed, 4 or 5 of the 15 best receivers in the country.
The Tristan Keys piece was woven in there. That was before the commitment, but around there were some other guys worth keeping an eye on. Of course, he mentioned Bo Bentley, the quarterback out of Salina in Texas. He's a 4-star, 6'1", 200 pounds, and I have a feeling this is one we're going to talk a lot about. He is ranked in the composite number 91 overall. On3 ranks him as the 47th best player and the 5th best quarterback. The lowest ranking is from, this is odd, ESPN has him 270 overall, but the 6th best quarterback. Rivals 221 overall, but 16th best quarterback. 24/7 has him as the number 75 player, the 7th best quarterback. So On3 has him as the 5th best quarterback. ESPN has him as the 6th best quarterback. 24/7 has him as the 7th best quarterback. And then Rivals has him 16th on the quarterback rankings. But a guy that was on campus, was blown away, and could very well be the guy that LSU targets to fill that quarterback gap here for the class of 2026. And one more, there's a big 5-star prospect named Emmanuel Iheanacho who took a visit to LSU. And this dude is an impressive specimen. I'll tell you about him in just a second, but here was Shay's background.
Yeah, I saw him in the New Orleans at the Super Bowl, did a Nike event for 32 teams and 32 players from kind of each area repped him. Blaine Bradford from Catholic was for the Saints. So Iheanacho was there for Redskins, or I guess Commanders, someone up on the East Coast. But I can confirm, large human. And that's also, he can move. And that's why he's got every offer in the world. That's why he's a 5-star. That's why he's jockeying with a guy named Jackson Cantwell for the number 1 or 2 offensive tackle in the country. Regardless, both are elite. And when I talked to him then, it was one of those things where I am getting recruited by every school in the country. I've lined up some officials. I haven't done the rest of them. But in terms of unofficial visits, here's what I've gotten free in the month of March. And he had one sort of stretch where he said, I may visit LSU, but there's like 20 other teams that want me to visit. And sure enough, here he is, pops on the campus today, and we'll be here for a couple of days. So that's big. I mean, Brad Davis has never lacked for recruiting elite offensive linemen. And so it's no shocker that a kid from the Baltimore, D.C. area is someone who's going to swing through for a visit as he continues to try to stockpile guys in the trenches. So that's a very big visit today. That's a top 10 overall prospect.
6'6", 350.
6'6", 350. By the way, in the on-3 composite, Emmanuel Iheanacho, the number 2 overall player in the country. None of the ranking services has him lower than 11. That's 24/7. 11, not 11 offensive linemen, 11 overall in the country. It's the lowest he is rated. So you were talking about a real dude. Not only Brad Davis, but also, remember, Alex Atkins, who's your tight ends coach, was the OC offensive line coach at Florida State, used to recruiting major prospects, especially on the East Coast. That doesn't hurt right there. One to file away and keep an eye on. Tigers built something special there in the 2026 class. Okay, let me knock out our final break. When we come back, the general is back in the big time. Got to talk about Will Wade getting the NC State job. That's next. Locked on LSU, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Daylight savings snuck up on us again. If you're feeling that lost hour of sleep, 5 Hour Energy has your back. The extra sunshine means more time for fun. But sometimes you need a little boost to power through, whether you're staying up late watching the NCAA tournament, squeezing in a round of golf after work, or just trying to keep up with your busy day. 5 Hour Energy gives you that quick, refreshing pick-me-up whenever you need it. Basketball Madness is here, y'all. You're staying up late watching all the tournament action. 5 Hour Energy can help you keep up the next day. So make sure you grab plenty of 5 Hour Energy. Head to 5hourenergy.com to find over 15 flavors to choose from, including watermelon, blue raspberry, peach mango. You can even build your own 12-pack or 24-pack. It's delivered right to your door. And if you need one now, you can grab a 5 Hour Energy shot at your local grocery or convenience store. They are everywhere. Stock up and get energized. Stock up today and stay energized with 5 Hour Energy. We're going to wrap up the show here in just a second, but quick moment about the bracket breakdown, which is coming up here on the Locked On Podcast Network.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
You've probably seen Will Wade as the new head coach, or will be the new head coach at NC State, and certainly congratulations are in order. As an LSU fan, there's a couple of ways to react to this. I know for a lot of people, it's a disappointment at the fact that LSU's basketball program is atrocious, and Will Wade had you rolling, and now he's going to coach someone else. And there's a lot of blame and fingers pointed at LSU's administration, both athletic and university, and I'm here to tell you that's misguided. This isn't revisionist history. This is what happened. It's just that some LSU fans and segments of the fan base choose to have selective amnesia. Will Wade was hired in 2017. In the summer of 2017 is when he got caught on the FBI wiretap. He was suspended in 2019, then later reinstated. He was fired in March of 2022 when the NCAA handed down the notice of allegations. LSU did the right thing in firing Will Wade. It sucked. I hated it. I loved Will Wade both as a coach and on a personal level. He was incredibly entertaining, and he won. And the other part of it, too, is that Will Wade wasn't doing anything that anyone else wasn't doing in college basketball. From John Calipari and Sean Miller and Bill Self and Rick Pitino and all the biggest names in college basketball. He's just the one who had his voice on a federal wiretap talking about paying a player. And the NCAA decided we're going to make an example out of him. He isn't a sacred cow. He was a young coach who was brash in your face, and they decided to make an example out of him. And the NCAA Infractions Committee used the LSU football violations as leverage to get Will Wade. This is not revisionist history. This is what happened. The LSU athletic administration for years pleaded publicly with the NCAA to close the book on the football case, the OLL case with Vidal Alexander's dad getting paid for a no-show job. And they never did. Why? Because they were using football as leverage to get Will Wade. And it worked. And LSU was right to sacrifice Will Wade to protect football. Because if you had level 1 violations simultaneously in both football and basketball, that is how you can get slapped with the dreaded lack of institutional control label. And when that happens, then the NCAA has carte blanche to look into anything they want in your entire athletic department. And if they're looking for something, they're going to find something. And so what happened? LSU fired Will Wade and slap on the wrist for basketball. A couple of scholarships here, there. Slap on the wrist for football. We'll take the bowl ban in the COVID year. You'll be down a scholarship for a couple of years, and that was it. Because the NCAA got what they wanted. They wanted Will Wade. And LSU sacrificed Wade to protect football, which they were absolutely right to do. Now, I think Will Wade is awesome, and I think he kind of got screwed, honestly. He was a guy that was scapegoated in an era where everybody was doing what he was doing. He just got caught. And now 3 years later, it's all legal. All of it. So it sucks. There's no other way around it. But for Will Wade, it's almost like Andy Dufresne. He was guilty of a lot of things with Shawshank Redemption, but he didn't kill his wife. And he paid for the crime 1,000 times over. And that's what Will Wade has had to do. Now, he didn't go to prison for decades, but he was out of coaching. He has spent the last 2 years at McNeese. He built that program up, and now he's got an opportunity back in the Power Four. He's going to make millions of dollars. He's going to be at a place where they value basketball far more than LSU ever did or ever will. He's going to be at a place that will be much better suited for him, and I hope he wins there. I hope he wins a championship, and if he does, when he does, I'll be cheering for him. So for LSU, you got your own issues. For those who wanted Will Wade back, it was never going to happen. Because if you're Will Wade, why would you come back? You had this job, and aside from the fact that the AD that fired you is still there, you had this job and knew what a lack of commitment there was to basketball. Everything's in football. Baseball gets what it wants. Even in basketball, Kim Mulkey's going to get what she wants before Will Wade or any LSU basketball coach gets what they want. So you are low down on the totem pole as an LSU basketball coach. Go spread your wings and fly at a place where they're going to let you do it. Good for Will Wade. To everybody that threw darts at him, screw you. There's no other way to say it. Why? The holier-than-thou attitude from some, Pat Forty in the media and other coaches as well. You all know, but by the grace of God, there go I, because everybody was doing what Will Wade was doing. It was the culture in college basketball. He just got caught. So, paid his penance. Now he's back in it. and I wish him well. I hope he does awesome. All right, y'all. That'll do it for us here on today's episode of Locked on LSU. Do me a solid. If you're on podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video, and let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you here every single day for Locked on LSU, your team every day.